Welcome to another topic. So now we are in the young adulthood or early adulthood period. So becoming an adult. So we are going to talk about the physical, cognitive, and personality development in young adulthood. So young adulthood is actually divided into two periods actually. So meron tayong bagong period na tinatawag pero hindi pa siya masyadong ini-introduce pa lang siya dito sa young or early adulthood period. So ang tawag dito sa period na ito ay emerging adulthood. Yan, from 18 to 25 years old. Kasi yung young or early adulthood period ay from 18 or 20 hanggang 40 years old. So itong emerging adulthood ay kumbaga parang transition going from adolescent, being an adolescent, and then turning into a young adult. So, the transition from the adolescence to adulthood. So, ito ay nangyayari approximately from 18 to 25 years old, which is characterized by experimentation and exploration. So, if you are 18 years old to 25 years old, so definitely you are now in the emerging adulthood. So, ano nga ba yung mga life task o yung mga ginagawa o mga nangyayari during this period? Okay, so tingnan natin yung sinasabi ni Jeffrey Arnett noong 2006, kung ano yung mga 5 key features that characterize emerging adulthood. So number 1, identity exploration, especially in love and work. Yan, emerging adulthood is a time during which key changes in identity takes place for many individuals. So, if you could remember, in the adolescence period, from the theory of Erik Erikson, dun pa lang nag-start na ng pag-explore ng identity. And then, it continues until young adulthood, Lalong-lalo na sa area ng love and work. Kasi ito yung time na kung saan they look for a mate, They select for a mate. Possible that most likely na makakasama nila sa habang buhay. And then sa work din. So, most likely, ang mga young adult ay finish na sa kanilang education. So, they are now entering in the workforce. Kaya naman, ito rin yung parang yung mga career choices, dito rin nangyayari yun. Ayan, so number 1 yan. And then number 2, instability. Yan. It's isa rin to sa mga key features, yung pagiging unstable. Yan. Residential changes peak during early adulthood, a time during which instability also is common in love, work, and education. So, pag sinabing instability or being unstable, ibig sabihin, papalit-palit pa, di ba? Palipat-lipat ng work, going from one partner to another partner, yan kasi hindi nag-work out yung relationship, so another relationship ulit, o kaya naman sa work, yung mga, halimbawa 6 months, 6 months, and then find another job, find another work, ayan, o kaya hindi ka naging masaya, or hindi mo nakita yung purpose mo dun sa work na yun, so possible talaga na you will keep changing jobs, during this period. And that's okay kasi yun nga, exploration, experimentation, you're trying to fit in to the environment and you're trying to fit the environment in you. So parang ganyan. And then ganun din sa education, some of the 18 to 25 are still studying, yung mga lalo yung mga working students natin, yung mga breadwinners in the family, kumbaga, syempre, nauna yung pagtatrabaho nila dun sa education, kaya yung education nila medyo nalileft behind. Ayan. Pero, okay lang kasi nakakahabol naman siya. Nakakahabol siya dahil emerging adulthood nga yung tawag dito, yung bang unstable pa. Hindi pa ganun ka-fix, hindi pa ganun ka-determined, kung ano ba talaga yung kanyang mga plans and ano ba talaga yung kanyang magiging future. Ayan. Number 3, self-focused. According to Arnett 2006, emerging adults are self-focused in the sense that they have little in the way of social obligations, little in the way of duties and commitments to others, which leaves them with a great deal of autonomy in running their own lives. So most of the time, ang mga emerging adult ay talaga namang ah, naka-focus sa sarili. Ibig sabihin, hindi naman selfish, no? Yung parang more on the self yung kanilang mga ginagawa. No? Yung purpose kung ba't nila ginagawa itong bagay na ito is because para sa kanilang mga sarili. Okay? So, hindi sila masyado dun sa part na maliban na lang 'no, kung yun nga, kung breadwinner sila, well, they can be focused on the family. However, since this is a western ano 'no, a western research, um, mas individual yung approach 'no, mas individualistic. Meaning, kung hindi ka galing sa family of a poor family 'no, let's say gano'n, family na medyo lower ang income, well, ang focus mo ay sa sarili mo. 'Yan, so hindi ka masyado dun sa obligation sa family or sa ayun nga, sa family mo, and then hindi ka rin masyadong committed no sa ibang tao or sa other organization. So mas self talaga yung focus mo dito, kaya ka nag-aaral, kaya ka nagtatrabaho is for yourself yan. Yeah. Okay, so emerging adulthood. And then number 4, feeling in between. Many emerging adults don't consider themselves adolescents or full-fledged adults. Ayan. So, para kang uh, not a girl, but not yet a woman. So, parang in between ka, no? Yung bang, hindi ka naman teenager na, pero at the same time, hindi mo pa rin naman kino-consider yung self mo na full-fledged adult na. Yan. Kaya nga, di ba, may term na nauuso ngayon, yung tinatawag nating adulting. Yan. Pag adulting ka na, so nandiyan na yung mga responsibility, obligations, no? Yung bang, kung dati, ang iniisip mo lang ay mga teenage stuffs, no? Ngayon, nagbabayad ka na ng own bills, no? Nag-grocery ka na, iniisip mo na kung ano yung mga furnitures na gusto mo, no? Naghahanap ka na ng mga real estate properties, mga ganyan, tumitingin-tingin ka na ng mga style ng mga bahay, no? Paano gagawin ng living room, kitchen, no? Mahilig ka na tumingin sa mga home and appliance, ano, sa department store, no? Yung section na yun. So, yun yung mga parts na masasabi mo na parang papunta ka na sa adult, pero hindi pa rin kino-consider as adult, kaya emerging. Ayan. And then number 5, the age of possibilities, a time when individuals have an opportunity to transform their lives. Ayan. So, ito yung age na maraming opportunity, maraming possibilities, yan, maraming doors na mag-open. Once na ma-finish mo na yung education, of course, number 1 yun. Once na ikaw ay nakakapagtrabaho na, no, meron ka ng bachelor's degree, ayan. Or some of us, no, hindi kailangan ng bachelor's degree. They have an entrepreneurial mindset. Ayan. So, marami din talagang possibilities at this time. So, sabi ni Arnett, he describes two ways in which emerging adulthood is the age of possibilities. Number 1, many emerging adults are optimistic, um, optimistic about their future. And 2, for emerging adults who have experienced difficult times while growing up, emerging adulthood presents an opportunity to chart their life course in a more positive direction. Ayan. So, mas, ano na sila, futuristic, no? Nakikita na nila yung what's ahead of them. Ayan. Kasi nga, ito na yung time na ano na nalalagpasan mo na, 'di ba? Yung mga struggles, no? Dulot ng adolescence, childhood, ayan. So, pag nakarating ka dito sa young adult or early adulthood, medyo nagkakaroon na ng pag-asa, no, na ay magbabago pa ang aking buhay. I can do so much, no, with what with my skills at present, ayan, with my potential. Yan. So very positive. Yan. Kasi pwedeng this is the yun nga opportunity din para i-chart mo, iplano mo yung life mo ahead, 'di ba? Kung ano yung mga tatahakin mo landas, anong work ang pupuntahan mo, yan. So, eto yung tinatawag nating emerging adulthood. What role transitions mark entry into adulthood? So, ano daw ba yung parang role, no? Para masabi mo na nag-transit ka na o na nandun ka na, no, sa adulthood. So, marami yan, no? From adolescence to adulthood, okay? So, the most widely used criteria for deciding whether a person has reached adulthood are role transitions. So, ito yung mga uh, responsibilities and duties, no, ng pagiging adult. So some societies use rituals called rites of passage, mark this transition clearly. However, such rituals are largely absent in Western culture. So for example, dito sa atin, sinasabi natin na kapag adult na tayo is marami yan, maraming rules. Una dyan, yung pag 18 ka na, di ba? So we have this debut, no? Debut ba yun? Debut? Ayan, sa mga, lalo sa mga babae, no, nagkakaroon na it's a kind of ritual, no, yung pag-birthday mo, so meron kang, ano to, yung birthday party, not the usual birthday party, no, yung debunga na tinatawag. Yan, so may mga 18 roses, 18 candles, 18 gifts, ayan. So that is one example, no, of a rites of passage, so from going from adolescence to adulthood. So sa boys, siguro yun nga, different kasi sa boys, no, hindi siya 18 years old ginagawa. So, 21, I think, no, I guess. Ayan. And then, other rites of passage, you can comment down kung ano pa yung ibang pang mga rituals na that happens, no, during the transition from adolescence to young adulthood. Ayan. Okay, so tingnan naman natin ngayon yung mga examples of role transitions that marks adulthood. So we have Ganika, Sherry, and Claudia. So tingnan natin, no, kung ano ba yung mga pinagdadaanan ni Ganika, Sherry, and Claudia. So Ganika looked older than her 20 years. Her son was playing quietly on the floor. She and her husband lived in a small house in a village in rural India. Okay? So si Ganika ay 20 years old. So in terms of age, yes, no, nasa adulthood na siya and meron na siyang anak. Okay? Maybe yung anak niya ay bata pa, no? Sabihin nating toddler or early childhood kasi naglalaro, no? And then, meron din siyang asawa and then nakatira sila separately sa isang maliit na bahay. Ayan, sa India. Okay? Ayan. So, si Danica ay masasabi natin sigurong yes, adult na siya because may separate household. Meron na siyang husband and son. No? 20 years old, yes. So, parang nasa emerging adulthood, yan. Although, hindi sinabi dito na nagtatrabaho na siya or na-finish niya na yung education niya, pero the example stated that she has a family of her own and a separate household. So meaning, yung role niya is now a mother, no, and a wife. Yeah. So that marks adulthood. Okay, number two, si Sherry graduated from high school a few years ago. She works full-time at the Old Navy store and rents a small apartment nearby. Ayan. So, si Sherry naman ay graduate na, no, sa high school. Pero hindi sinabi dito na siya ay graduate ng college. So, we assume na si Sherry ay hindi pa tapos, no, sa kanyang education. Alright? However, nagwo-work na siya full-time. So, again, that marks a role, no, transition in adulthood. Yan, kasi nagwo-work na siya eh. And permanent, no, full-time. At nagre-rent pa ng sarili niyang apartment. So, ibig sabihin, she runs her own household then. And then, she is financially stable. And however, yun nga, wala pa siyang family of her own and she did not finish education or completed her education. But still, in terms of her role, no, being a worker, yan, a full-time permanent worker, and then siya rin yung nagra-run or siya yung head ng household ng sarili niyang apartment. So, adulthood pa rin naman si Cherie, no? Young adult. Okay. And then Claudia recently graduated from college in Germany, but due to economic downturn, she lives with her mother while she looks for a job. Okay? Si Claudia naman ay yan, graduate ng college. So, ibig sabihin, she completed her education. But, yun nga, dahil nagkaroon ng pagbabago sa economic, so, na siguro, yun nga, maraming na lay off ng work, so nawalan siya, wala siyang trabaho pa, okay, hindi pa siya nakakapaghanap, pero graduate na siya. So, adult na rin siya kasi graduate na siya eh. Yan, and then, pero nakatira pa rin siya sa nanay niya, no? She lives with her mother, wala siyang sariling apartment tulad ni Cherie, wala rin siyang asawa pa at anak tulad ni Ganika, at naghahanap pa rin ng trabaho. But of course, she is graduated from college or she completed her education. So yung tatlong babae na to, parang may kanya-kanya silang role, no? Si Ganika, naging nanay, naging asawa, yun nga pa, kaya lang di niya pa na-finish siguro yung kanyang education, wala siyang trabaho. Siya rin naman, hindi niya na-finish yung education niya pero may permanent trabaho siya at may sarili rin siyang apartment. And si Claudia naman, naka-finish siya ng education, however, wala naman siyang trabaho at wala rin siyang sarili pang pamilya. Pero all of them have their own role, transitions that marks adulthood. Okay, so ito yung mga role transitions. Ayan, so voting, di ba? Start ng 18 years old dito sa atin, sa Philippines, pwede na tayong mag-vote. Ayan, so ibig sabihin, you're already an adult na. And then once na 18 years old ka na, there are certain, halimbawa, let's say sa media, no, yung mga movies na pwede mo nang panoorin. Ayan, then pwede ka nang bumili ng mga alcoholic beverages. Ayan, dahil ikaw ay 18 years old na. So, that marks adulthood also. Ayan, completing education. Ito yung sinasabi ko. So, once na natapos mo na, kasi dapat pag sinabing adult na, hindi ka na nag-aaral, no? So, parang in a way, na-complete mo na yung basic, no? Yung hanggang college. Ayan. Of course, hindi kasama yung master's degree and post-doctoral degree. Ayan. And then, beginning full-time employment, of course, ayan, syempre, tapos ka na mag-aral, so, ang kasunod niyan ay trabaho, no? And then, nag-uumpisa ka na maging full-time and permanent doon sa iyong employment. And then, leaving home, ayan. So, ito yung common nito sa mga Western countries, no? Wherein independence is valued, no? But however, dito sa atin, because we have this culture na close family ties, we do not usually leave our home. No? We stay, we work, but we chose to stay with our own families. Ayan, instead of renting our own place and running our own household. Ayan, siguro kasi nagtitipid or we just love our family, kaya ayaw nating umalis. Ayan. So, it depends, okay? Pero ngayon, siguro yung mga ibang millennials or some Gen Z siguro, uh, dahil nag-iiba na yung trend, no? Very modernized and progressive na yung ating society. So, maybe, dahil nga nagbo-boom din yung mga pag-rise ng mga condominiums, no? Yung mga condotels, ganyan, and other apartment, no? So, siguro ngayon, possible na talaga nagsosolo na yung iba. They would like to be independent, no? To be autonomous. Ayan. So, let's see, no? Kung saan tayo dadalihin ng ganyang trend. But it's good, it's nice. At least napapractice yung pagiging independent and pagiging autonomous natin, no? Kasi minsan pangit din naman 'no, yung pagiging kung masyado tayong dependent on our family, ayan. Pero yun nga, it takes time kasi culture yan, eh, mahirap siyang baguhin. So, dito sa'tin talagang lalo na sa Philippines 'no, and other Asian countries talagang we promote closer family ties, okey? Establishing an independent household. Ayan na nga, yun. So, when you leave home, well, you should establish your own household. You pay your own bills, your rent sa house, no, yung ilaw, tubig, and then groceries, no, yung mga repairs, yung plumbing, or anything that need repair in your house, ikaw na yung bahala. And then, yung mga household chores, no, yung mga paglalaba, pagluluto, well, yan ay part ng pagiging adult. Okay? Being financially independent, of course. Ayan, kapag ikaw ay working na, dapat, di ba, ikaw na yung bumibili ng sarili mong mga things. Yan, clothes, shoes, bags. Ayan, and then you now pay your own rent, your own bills. So, financially independent talaga. Getting married, ayan. So, isa rin ito sa mga role transitions. Yan. But of course, um, depende. Hindi naman, ah, pagsapit mo ng adult, you'll get married na at once. So, it takes time also. And it depends, no? It varies kung kailan magpapakasal. But this is the time or period wherein pwede na. Pwede ka na mag-asawa, ayan, pwede ka na magpakasal, and bumuo ng sarili mong family. And then, becoming a parent. Diba? So, once you get married, so possible na talagang you become a parent. You have your own kids, you send them to school, yeah, and then you take the responsibility of being a parent. How does going to college reflect the transition to adulthood? Over half of all college students are over age 25. These students tend to be more motivated and have many other positive characteristics. College serves as a catalyst for cognitive development. Returning adult students are college students over age 25. So, sinasabi natin kanina, no, na ang emerging adulthood ay from 18 to 25 years old. And majority ng ating mga working students, no, o mga returning college students na nasa college ay over age 25. And masasabi ko rin na talaga namang by experience, no, sa 6 na taon ko ng pagtuturo, I saw them, no, yung mga 25 above na college students, no, mga returning college students or adult students, na they are more motivated talaga, they are more diligent in their classworks, no, yung mga pagpapasa ng mga projects, assignments, they attend classes regularly and punctual, very punctual, and they're very, very polite, yan, in terms of character. And yes, they have positive no characteristics. They see the future ahead of them. They plan. Yan. Kasi nga nasa emerging adulthood na sila. So parang they take this as a last chance yan to get more in life. Yan. Kaya naman it reflects also yung transition going to adulthood. Yan. Kapag nag-college ulit or nagbalik sa pagiging college. Here are the characteristics of a returning adult student o yung mga over age 25. Ayan. So, they are problem solvers, self-directed, pragmatic, and may have increased stress due to work, family, school conflict, and have relevant life experiences. So, in my experience, talaga namang ang mga returning adult students, no, majority of them already have their own family, may mga anak na sila, some of them are still working na rin, no, they have work, kaya they have increased stress talaga. Kumbaga, minamanage nila how to balance work, family, and school conflict. Yan, kaya naman, they are more problem solvers, no? They solve their own problem. They are self-directed. Hindi na sila sinasabihan. They have this initiative. They are more responsible. They are more practical in a way. Ayan. And then, marami na silang mga life experiences. Kaya sa mga reflection papers, sa mga essays, marami din silang nailalagay talaga na mga related na personal experiences nila dun sa isang concept o sa isang topic. Dahil naman sa mga pinagdaanan na rin nila sa buhay. Kaya nakakatulong din talaga yung kanilang mga life experiences. Hindi mo rin talaga siya matatawaran. So, ito yung mga positive na characteristics no, ng isang returning adult student. Okay, so what behavioral criteria mark the transition to adulthood? So, ano nga ba yung parang kilos o gawi ng mga papunta na sa adulthood? Ayan. So, a major difference between adolescence and adulthood is a drop in the rate of participation in reckless behavior. So, yun yung parang malaking diferensya, no? Na makita mo na, hindi na siya nag-engage sa mga risky behaviors, no? Hindi na siya padalos-dalos, hindi na siya pabigla-bigla sa kanyang mga desisyon, no? Hindi na rin siya nag-engage sa mga risky, no, na mga gawain, yan. So, medyo mas maingat na, no? Ang tawag dito ay edge work. Ayan, the desire to live life more on the edge through physically and emotionally threatening situations on the boundary between life and death. Ayan. So, nag-iingat na sila kasi nga, lalo na kung halimbawa ay meron na silang pamilya o may mga anak na sila. So, kung dati mahilig ka pang sumakay sa mga, halimbawa, example lang, no, mahilig ka sumakay sa mga rides, no, sa mga life-threatening rides sa Star City o sa Enchanted Kingdom, yan, yung halos bumabaliktad ka, hinahagis ka, yan. Pero since ikaw ay nasa adulthood na, or meron ka na yun na nga, own family and children, well, you'll think twice, no, for your own safety, because, syempre, iniingatan mo yung, hindi lang yung sarili mo, kasi, syempre, ingatan mo talaga na mawala ka kaagad sa mundo, kasi maliliit pa yung mga anak mo, kailangan pa nila ikaw, kaya talagang, hindi ka masyadong ano, no, hindi mo i-risk yung buhay mo. Yan, kaya magda-drop talaga yung mga reckless behavior natin during this time. Yan, kung dati pala inom ka, no, okay lang umuwi sa'yo na madaling araw na, umaga na, ngayon hindi na kasi meron ka ng pamilyang uuwian, meron mga nag-aantay sa'yo. Ayan, and then you need to work, no, early in the morning. So you have to sleep early also. So yan yung mga behavioral criteria that marks a transition to adulthood. Okay, so in establishing intimacy, ayan. So pagkatapos nating ma-explore, ma-identify kung sino ba talaga tayo, 'di ba? Yung sa identity versus role confusion. So once na ma-complete mo na 'yon, ma-identify mo na who you are, then you are now in the next stage of establishing intimacy. This is the major psychosocial task for young adults. Intimacy versus isolation. So young adults grapple with issues reporting to intimacy, although whether this occurs only after the issue of identity is resolved differs across gender. So, hindi naman din pareho ang babae at lalaki in terms of the ability na to resolve the issue of intimacy versus isolation. So, sinasabi nga natin na once na alam mo na kung sino ka, then you can now share your identity to someone else. Hindi lang naman sinasabing intimacy refers only to romantic relationships. It also involves, or it can also be relevant or related to friendship, di ba? Forming friendships, forming collaboration with other members in the organization. Ayan, ability to share or to divulge or to confide your feelings and thoughts to someone else. Ayan, so ito yung time na nagbe-build ka na ng relationship with other people. Yan. So, kapag hindi mo masyadong kilala pa ang iyong sarili or hindi mo pa identified talaga kung sino ka, then medyo mahihirapan ka sa part ng pag-share ng identity mo. Yan, so doon ka sa part ng isolation, 'di ba? Yung you will isolate yourself, you don't want to engage yourself to any social relationship, no? Mapa-romantic man 'yan or friendship, yan. Because yun nga, o kaya naman papalit-palit ka pa ng partner kasi nga hindi mo pa kilala kung sino ka, kung ano yung gusto mo sa isang partner. Kaya mahirapan ka talaga maging intimate sa someone else. Ayan. Okay, so sabi ni Montgomery noong 2005, he found out that a stronger sense of identity was related to higher levels of intimacy in young adults. O, di ba? So, sinasabi niya dito na talagang kapag meron ka ng sense, no? Hindi lang basta sense, kundi stronger sense of identity, no? Kilalang kilala mo na ang sarili mo, you know what you want, you know what you like, then mas higher ang levels of intimacy na kaya mong i-provide sa kapwa mo. Yan. So, most men and career-oriented women resolve identity issues before intimacy issues. Ayan. Kasi nga naman, syempre, pag nauna yung career, no, nahuhuli yung sa intimacy yan, yung sa pag-engage or pag-build ng romantic relationship. Ayan. So, kadalasan yan sa mga lalaki, nauuna talaga yung career, no, yung kanilang identity issue in terms of career, in terms of achievement, yan, kaysa sa romantic relationship or sexual orientation, yan, sexual identity, of course, yan. And then some women resolve intimacy issues before identity issues by marrying and rearing children. Yung iba naman gano'n, no, baliktad. Nauna yung pag-aasawa and then doon nila na nakita kung sino sila. And then, hindi pa naman huli ang lahat. Pwede mo naman ma-resolve pa rin yung issue of identity mo even though you are now married and have children on your own. Yan. Then, self-discovery of middle-aged women who go to college for the first time. Ayan, yung iba naman, nauuna talaga yung pag-aasawa, no? Lalo na sa mga middle-aged women na nag-aaral ulit, no? Yung mga returning adult students natin. So, nauna yung intimacy issue bago yung kanila identity. Actually, hindi naman rigid si Erickson, no? Pagdating dun sa, ano ba dapat yung mauna na ma-resolve dun sa stage na yon. Lalong-lalo na dito sa part na 'to, yung sa identity at saka sa ah, intimacy na 'yan. Okay? Kasi nga he himself, no, Eric Erickson himself had suffered, no, it's a challenge for him to resolve his own identity crisis. Nagkaroon din siya ng ganyan. Kaya nahirapan din siyang mag-engage into an intimate relationship, 'di ba? Yan. Kaya lang, yun nga, sabi nga may nag-advise sa kanya na, oh, pare, kung hindi mo pa kakasalan yan, kung hindi, kasi nga, parang alam ko nabuntis niya na yung babae na yun, and then, parang ayaw niya to get married. Kaya lang, iisip niya na, kung ano yung nangyari sa kanya nung bata siya, hindi niya kilala yung tatay niya, ganun din yung mangyayari dun sa magiging anak niya, no, dun sa babae na yun. Kaya, na-realize niya na oo nga naman, kawawa naman yung magiging anak ko, pati siya magkakaroon siya ng identity crisis. Yan. Kaya hanggang sa namatay siya, medyo hindi talaga fully resolved yung kanyang identity dahil never niyang nakilala yung kanyang biological father. Pero hindi naman yun naging hadlang para siya ay maging successful, no? Isa siyang successful na psychologist, kahit di siya nakatapos no, ng pag-aaral, kung ano-ano yung mga kinuha niyang kurso, no, artist siya, naging musician siya, lahat na yata nasubukan niya sa life. Yan, so, yun. And, yun yung sinasabi niya dito, no, pwede naman, lalo na sa mga babae, kadalasan sa babae nangyari yun, na nauuna yung intimacy issues bago yung identity issues. Ayan. How does achieving financial independence reflect the transition to adulthood? Launching oneself as financially independent is a major marker of achieving adulthood in Western society. This can be achieved in many ways, such as series of part-time jobs, joining the military, and going to college, and then entering the workforce. So, sinasabi natin, di ba, kanina na one of the role transition of that marks the adulthood period is being financially stable or being financially independent. So, paano ba natin to ma-achieve, no? Paano ba tayo magiging financially independent? So, syempre, mag-take tayo ng mga part-time jobs, ayan, and then full-time job, syempre, mag-college, and then enter the workforce. Yan, kaya nga, majority ng mga Filipino children, they go to school from elementary, high school, and then college, and then afterwards, they seek for a job, and then aim for a full-time employment. So, yan naman talaga yung ating parang goal, no? Para tayo ay maging financially independent. Kasi kapag may trabaho ka, kapag meron kang stable, permanent job, then mag-open ang maraming opportunities for you, no? Mas mamamanage mo yung mga finances mo, no? Yung mga pambayad sa bahay, yung pangsustento mo sa sarili mo, no? Kaya nga ngayon, uso yung mga insurances, yan, para mas lalo ka pang makapag-invest, no? Maging financially smart and wise, di ba? Sa pag-handle ng money. Yan. So, that is also part of being an adult, no? Hindi tayo gasta ng gasta, yeah, mas minamanage mo na, binabalance mo na yung expenses mo at saka yung nasisave mo. Ayan. So, that marks the transition also to adulthood. Okay? Okay. So, according to a research by Hennig 2010, it is increasingly common for college graduates to return home to live with their parents to establishing financial independence. So, lalong-lalo na no, dito sa Asian countries, dito, lalo na dito sa atin, huwag na tayong lalayo. Diba? Hindi naman porke ikaw ay nakatapos na ng kolehiyo ay talagang aalis ka na sa bahay. Of course, they return home pa rin, no, to live with the parents. Ayan, and at the same time, pwede ka namang mag-establish ng financial independence kahit nandun ka sa poder ng magulang mo. Especially if your parents are also working, no, they have their own money. Ayan, so you can also be independent. However, majority of Filipino household have their parents not working anymore, or yun nga, majority of us are in a lower socioeconomic status. So, being a college graduate is something na talagang accomplishment na parang, o anak, ikaw na yung bubuhay sa amin, ikaw na yung mag-aahon sa pamilya natin, sa kahirapan. So, may mga ganun tayong thinking as Filipino. Ayan. And then, in a way, nagiging financially independent, hindi lang ikaw as individual, but of course, the whole family itself. Yan. According naman kay Keynes and Bayers in 2010, living on one's own accelerates the achievement of adulthood, whereas living with one's parents slows the process of becoming an independent adult. So, ito yung parang nakita niya dun sa study niya na disadvantage, no? At saka advantage ng pagtira o paninirahan sa sa pamilya ba? Sa makikitira ka pa ba sa pamilya o you will live independently. So sabi dito ni Kinsen Bayers, um, mas yung sarili no, yung individuality mo as a person, mas ma-accelerate mo daw yung achievement kung ikaw ay nakatira sa sarili mo lang. Kumbaga ikaw ay hindi na nakikitira sa magulang mo, you live independently, you have your own apartment, no? So mas nakafocus ka doon sa pag-achieve no ng mga bagay-bagay lalo na in terms of career and handling finances. However, kung ikaw naman daw ay nakatira sa parents, no, na most of us are like that. Okay, lalo na kung single ka pa. Well, it slows down naman the process of becoming an independent adult. Yan. So, in a way, parang yung mga decision making, career decisions, or even love decision, marital decisions, naka-dependent ka pa rin sa parents kapag doon ka nakatira. So, yun yung mga parang advantage and disadvantage So, how about you? Anong thoughts nyo dito, no, sa ganitong setup? Are you in favor of living with your family pa rin, even though you have finished the education and you already have the job? Or you want to rent your own apartment or your own condominium unit, no, to live independently, manage your own finances, and decide for your own self. So, what do you think? When do people become adults? Challenges faced by many adults in their 20s have been termed the quarter life crisis. Adjustment to adulthood is more difficult when the process of transition is less clear. So, yung quarter life crisis, ito yung nararanasan ng mga emerging adults, no? Yung mga nasa 20 to 25, yan. Quarter life kasi parang kino-consider natin na yung 100 years, no, of our lives. Technically, parang, of course, that is just an approximate. So, ang one-fourth nun ay nasa 25. So, ibig sabihin, yung mga pangyayari sa buhay natin once we are in our 20s, so, most likely, ito yung parang dito tayo nag-a-adjust sa maraming bagay. 'Di ba? After graduation, after graduating from college, we'll look for a job, no? We'll look for a stable source of income. And then afterwards, we look for a partner, no? So, ito yung mga parang nagbabalance tayo ng mga roles, no? Nadadagdagan yung roles mo. Dati, nung ikaw ay adolescent pa lang, child, you're just a child, no? Isa ka lang anak, ate or kapatid, kaklase. Pero ngayon, nadadagdagan yung roles. You are now a worker, an employee, or a boss, no? And then afterwards, you are now a mother, a wife. Yan. So, maraming mga roles na talaga namang it makes us difficult to adjust to these roles. Kaya tinatawag itong quarter life crisis. Kaya it's very normal to feel stressed, to feel disappointed or frustrated kapag hindi mo nagagawa yung mga, or hindi natutupad yung mga goals mo dati. Kasi eto na talaga yun. This is the real setting, no, the work-life balance, ganyan. So, kaya ang tawag talaga sa kanya ay quarter life crisis. Yan, kasi nga parang marami kang pinagpipilian, marami ka pang alternatives, and then wala ka pang masyadong kino-commit, no? Hindi ka pa nagko-commit doon sa mga choices mo. So, malaki ang possibility talaga na you transfer from one job to another, and then you get a partner, no? And then possible pa rin na mapalitan pa at hindi pa talaga yun yung stable because you are in a crisis. So there are many alternatives and yet you do not have any commitment. Okay, so now we are in the physical development in early adulthood or young adulthood. So in what respects are young adults in their physical peak? Young adulthood is the time when certain physical abilities peak. Strength, muscle development, coordination, dexterity, and sensory acuity. Most of these abilities begin to decline in middle age. So, as the textbook says, ito yung age or period na kung saan ay talagang nasa peak, no? Ibig sabihin ng peak, ito yung parang kung saan ay pinakamalakas, pinaka-strong yung build, no, ng katawan physically ng mga adult. Kaya naman, kapag young adult ka, parang ito yung time na energized ka, marami kang kayang gawin, you can be involved in many activities, rigorous man yan, or mga calm activities lang. Well, lahat ng klaseng activities ay kayang-kayang gawin ng isang tao na nasa young adulthood period. Kasi nga, ito yung period din na bihira magkasakit, no? Hindi sila Kumbaga ito yung time or age na hindi masyadong nagpapa-ospital, no? Unlike mga bata, sila yung talagang madalas na makikita mo sa hospitals. Pero yung mga nasa edad na young adult or early adult, bihira. Bihira mo sila makikita na nagpapa-check up. Okay? So, ito talaga yung maganda yung physical or health, no? Yung physical health nila. Yan, during the young adult. How healthy are young adults in general? Young adults are also at the peak of health. Death from disease is relatively rare, especially during the 20s. So kung paramihan lang din naman ng mga namamatay, yung age group na to, sila yung mas kokonti compared sa old age at saka sa childhood, no? Yan. Accidents are the leading cause of death. However, homicide and violence are major factors in some groups. Yan. So, kung mamamatay man, mas marami ang namamatay sa accidents sa age group na to. Hindi sa sakit, no? Kasi nga, wala eh. Ano pa, maganda pa yung physical health, no? Yung healthy pa. Wala pang, kumbaga yung lungs, yung heart, no? Talagang nasa peak of development pa. So, most likely, hindi sila mamamatay in terms of having a disease or having a cancer, no? So, most likely accident, yan. Pwede ring homicide, no? Yung mga na-involved sa mga crime. Yan. And violence. Kasi nga, lalo na, limbawa, kung pumaparty, so sa party, syempre, di ba, kapag nakainom, so mas nagiging aggressive, mas nagiging violent, so may tendency talaga na ma-involve, no, sa mga ganitong klaseng crime, like homicide. Yan. And in poor ethnic minorities have less access to good health care, and poverty is also a major barrier to good health. So ito yung isa sa factor, no, yung malaking social factor, the poverty itself. So when you are poor, you have less access to education and also to healthcare. Unlike if you have a quality education, if you completed an education, then you have a stable job and then you have access to healthcare or health cards, no? Kaya mas na-monitor mo yung health mo. Unlike dun sa mga medyo nasa poverty line, ah medyo hindi sila nakaka-access sa mga gano'n, 'no? Wala silang mga health card, wala silang PhilHealth, 'yan. So, most likely hindi nila namo-monitor yung kanilang health. So, malalaman na lang nila, minsan nga hindi na nila nalalaman, eh, kung ano yung bakit namatay agad or bakit lumala yung sakit kasi nga hindi naman napapa-check up. Unlike kapag meron kang access or namo-monitor mo yung health status mo at a young age, as early as young adult, then mapagpaplanuhan mo siya, mape-prepare mo yung self mo, you can prevent, no, the disease para lumala ito, di ba? Makakapag-take ka kagad ng mga preventive measures like medicine, surgery, and all. So, yon, malaki talaga yung factor ng poverty. Yan, it's a social factor. How does young adults' health differ as a function of socioeconomic status, gender, and ethnicity? The two most important social factors in health are socioeconomic status and education. The poorest health conditions exist for African Americans living in poor, inner city neighborhoods. Other ethnic groups with limited access to health care also suffer. So tulad ng sinabi ko kanina, di ba, yung sa poverty, isa siyang napakalaking social factor talaga na yes, it can be related also to socioeconomic, di ba? Kasi nga, yung socioeconomic includes yung family income, no? The monthly family income, the education attainment, and the occupation of those members of the family who have work. And then the education, yun na nga, education attainment is part ng socioeconomic status. So kapag ikaw ay hindi nakapag-aral, hindi ka nakapagtrabaho, so talagang ma lesser yung access mo no dun sa mga healthcare and to other privilege no na yun nga yung tanging mga nasa siguro mga upper class, middle to upper class ng society yung nakaka-access. Yan. So whether women or men are healthier, yeah, in terms of gender naman, it's difficult to answer because women have been excluded from much health research. So mas marami daw yung mga researches concerning men. Ayan. Pero wala naman masyadong difference kung sino ba mas healthier. Although, mas mahaba daw ang buhay ng mga babae. Ayan. Compared sa boys or sa male. Ayan. And then, higher education is associated with better health via better access to healthcare and more knowledgeable about proper diet and lifestyle. So, yun nga. So, connected talaga, no? Kapag, syempre, medyo nakapag-aral, ay di mas may access talaga pagdating sa ano ba yung proper lifestyle, ano ba yung proper diet, no? Para tayo ay maging malusog, para tayo ay maganda, no, yung ating health. Yan, tayo ay healthy. So, that's it. Sexual activity in emerging adulthood. At the beginning of emerging adulthood, age 18, surveys indicate that slightly more than 60% of individuals have experienced sexual intercourse. But by the end of emerging adulthood, which is age 25, most individuals have had sexual intercourse. So that is according to Lefkowitz and Gillen, 2006. Also, one study of 18 to 26 years old revealed that perceived relationship commitment, though not formal relationship commitment, usually indexed by marriage, was linked to sexual enjoyment. And that is according to Galinsky and Sonnenstein in 2013. A sexual script is a stereotype pattern of role prescriptions for how individuals should behave sexually. Yan, according to Whittaker and others in 2018. So, itong mga researches na to tackles about sexual activities in emerging adulthood because during this time, no, during this age, 18 to 25, syempre, nag-emerge ulit yung mga sexual desires. So, most likely, majority of emerging adults are engaging no, in sexual activities. Yan. So, sinasabi dito, no, actually, this is a Western studies. So, sinasabi dito na marami, no, 60% ng mga naka-experience na ng sexual intercourse. Ayan. Ay sila din yung kumbaga mas madami, no? Mas madami yung engage in sexual intercourse pagdating ng edad ng 25. 18 to 25. Ayan. And then, hindi naman pa ganoon ka perceive yung commitment dun sa relationship, no? Kumbaga, more on sexual enjoyment. Yan. Kumbaga, hindi pa nagpapakasal, di ba? Kapag nagpakasal na, ito na yung parang sinasabi natin na, may commitment na. no, na no matter for good and bad times, you will stay in the relationship no matter what. Pero since hindi pa kasal, no, wala pang index ng marriage, and then more on sexual enjoyment lang. Okay? And then yung sexual script, ito yung mga stereotype pattern of role prescription kung paano ba dapat mag-behave sexually ang mga tao. Yan. So, tingnan natin kung ano ba yung mga sexual scripts. Right? So, ito yung mga sexual scripts na sinasabi natin, no? So, we have sex drive, physical and emotional sex, sexual performance, initiation and gateway scripts, and sexual evaluation. So, sa sex drive, sinasabi natin, no, ini-stereotype natin na yung mga lalaki, they are always ready for sex. And women inhibit their sexual expression. Ayan. So, ibig sabihin yan, no matter what your culture is, di ba, lalo na dito sa atin, sa Philippines, no, Asian countries, talagang medyo, ano tawag doon, yung conservative, no, conservative yung mga women pagdating sa pag-express ng kanilang sex drive. Yan, so parang ang mga lalaki mas, kumaga stereotype, no, ginugrupo natin, no, based doon sa kanilang mga behaviors, yung mga tao. So, in terms of gender, sinasabi natin na mas mataas talaga ang level, no, ng sex drive ng mga lalaki dahil parang preoccupied sila lagi ng tungkol sa sex. Unlike sa women, na siguro they are, yes, they are experiencing, they are, um, ano to, nakakaramdam din naman sila ng sex drive. But of course, nililimit nila or pinipigilan, no? Pag sinabi inhibit, pinipigilan nila yung pag-express, no, ng kanilang mga sexual desires or sex drive. Yan. And then physical and emotional sex, sabi dito, men have a physical approach to sex and women have an emotional or relational approach to sex. Yan. So sabi dyan, pag sa lalaki, mas physical, no, yung kanilang approach. Kumbaga, may mga times na um, yung pakikipag-sex nila ay dala lang ng yun nga, sex drive, no? Pangkatawan lang, ang tawag doon, yung bang physical reaction, di ba, nakakita ka ng sexy, or nakapanood ka ng medyo may sexual content, di ba? Kumbaga, physical, no? Kasi na-attract ka physically. So, there are times na in a relationship, more on physical lang talaga yung pagdating sa sex. Pero, sa mga women, meron silang ina-attach na emotional or relation, no, sa pakikipagtalik. Yan. So, parang sinasabi dito na, oo, may physical, pero merong kaakibat, no? Merong, kapag nakipagtalik ang babae, ibig sabihin, mahal niya. Yan. So, parang may ganon, no? Emotional sex. Okay? So, yan yung mga sexual scripts. And then, pagdating naman sa sexual performance, men and women should be sexually skilled and knowledgeable. So, wala tayong parang dapat mas knowledgeable, mas nakakaalam yung babae or lalaki. So, dapat pareho sila na maalam, marunong, at alam, no, kung ano ang tungkol sa sex. And then one new aspect of this sexual script for women was agreement that women should especially have oral sex skills. Yan. So, yun yung parang bago, no, na of course, men and women should be sexually skilled and knowledgeable, but for women, no, may additional, no, sa additional na part is yung pagiging marunong din or maalam pagdating sa oral sex skills. Ayan. And then, pang-apat, initiation and gateway scripts. Sabi dito, men initiate sex. Um, and then women are gatekeepers. Ayan. So what do we mean by initiate? No? Most men and some women agreed with this script. No? Parang dapat ang mauunang magyaya or mag initiate, no, sa English, or magyaya sa Tagalog, no? Yung parang sa mga mag-asawa yung unang kakalabit, ganyan, is men. Okay? Parang nandun pa rin yung conservative na approach, no? Doon sa ganong thinking, sa ganong script, no? Na men should initiate sex, yan, instead of women. And then the women are the gatekeepers, no? They set the limits. Ayan, na, oops, oh, hanggang dito lang, or okay, tama na, or pwedeng ayaw ko, or saka na lang, ganyan, next time, yung ganun. So, women, kasi ang lalaki, sige, sige, no, parang may ganong connotation na, okay, walang hangganan, di ba, sky's the limit, but for women, they should be the gatekeepers. Men would start, no, and then women, parang sila yung oops, okay, stop, uh, these are my limits, these are the boundaries, no, nung sexual contact. Ayan. And then for sexual evaluations, single women who appear sexual are judged negatively. 'Di ba? Parang kapag nakikita natin yung mga ah, single women, no, sinasabi natin, ako, ano yan, tigang yan, no, yung mga ganyan. So, ginajudge natin sila negatively, or siguro hindi siya marunong or hindi siya maalam, no, kaya walang tumatagal na relationship. So may mga ganun tayong judgment, no. And then men are rewarded for being sexual, di ba? So parang in a way naman, kapag mas maraming karanasan yung lalaki, parang maganda yung ating evaluation sa kanila. However, there was negative judgment of men who come across as too sexual and too often engage in casual sex, especially with different women. Yan. So, meron din namang mga negatibong komento sa mga lalaki na papalit-palit o masyadong mahilig sa sex, no? Yan. Yan. Tinatawag natin sila mga palikero, babaero, ganyan. So, hindi rin, may mga ganun ding instances. Alright? So, that is the following are the sexual script. One study revealed that 20% of first-year college women on one large university campus engaged in at least one hookup over the course of the school year. So in this study by Fielder and others in 2013, impulsivity, sensation-seeking, and alcohol use were among the predictors of a higher likelihood of hooking up. Okay? So, when we say hook up, para siyang casual sex, no? Para siyang one night stand, no? Na nangyayari na wherein kahit walang relationship yung dalawang tao, ay pupwede sila na magkaroon ng sexual intercourse or contact. Yan. So, ito ay pag-aaral sa Amerika pa rin, no? Sinasabi dito na dun sa 20% ng mga first year college women, at least, no, isa doon ay nakipag-hook up na sa buong school year, no, hanggang sa matapos. At yung dahilan or pwedeng mag-predict, no, para sa possibility ng pakikipag-hook up ay pagiging impulsive, no, ibig sabihin pabigla-bigla, risky, no? Risky behavior, and sensation seeking, no? Yung bang naghahanap tayo ng stimulation coming from external factors, and also alcohol use. Yan, so parang sinasabi dyan na mas more likely, no, na kapag ikaw ay nagiinom, kumbaga parang kakabit na nung pagiinom, yung pakikipagtalik. Parang mas more likely na kapag nagiinom or during inuman, pwede rin ganon, ay mas more likely na mag-engage sa casual sex or sa hookups. In addition to hooking up, another type of casual sex that has recently increased in emerging adults is yung tinatawag nating friends with benefits or FWB, which involves a relationship formed by the integration of friendship and sexual intimacy without an explicit commitment characteristic of an exclusive romantic relationship. So, yung friends with benefits naman, na isa ring klase ng casual sex, ay nauuso din o nagte-trending, no? Kumbaga parang ito yung wala kayong relationship, no? Walang mutual uh, commitment, no? To between both of you, but you are engaging in casual sex, no? In hookups, ganyan. Kumbaga may nangyayari sa inyo kahit na kayo ay magkaibigan lamang. Yan. So, yan yung isa sa mga common or nauuso or trending sa ngayon. Okay? So, what are some predictors of risky heterosexual behavior in emerging adults, such as engaging in casual and unprotected sexual intercourse? So, some research findings indicate the following. Alright, so ito yung mga factors na sinasabi natin kanina, no? Yung sexual risk factors increase in emerging adulthood with males engaging in more of these risk factors than females. For example, males have more casual sexual partners while females report being more selective about their choice of a sexual partner. So sinasabi dyan na mas madami na mga lalaki yung merong casual sexual partners o yung mga nakilala lang nila or first time lang nilang makausap, and then, ayun na, nagkaroon na ng contact. And then, yung mga females naman, mas mapili naman sila. No? Hindi naman, kumbaga, pwede ring mangyari yung at first glance or at first encounter, but they are more selective, no? Pwedeng pinipili din nila, mas mapili lang sila pagdating sa choice kung kanino sila makikipagtalik. Yan. So, individuals who become sexually active in adolescence engage in more risky sexual behaviors in emerging adulthood kesa doon sa mga counterparts na hindi pa sila sexually active hanggang sa maging emerging adult na sila. So, kapag ikaw ay sinasabi dyan na kapag sexually active ka nung teenager ka pa lang, mas malaki yung chance na mag-engage ka sa mas risky na mga sexual behaviors pagdating mo sa emerging adulthood. Emerging adults who are in college or who have graduated from college report having fewer casual sex partners than those without a high school diploma. Kaya kung i-compare naman daw sa mga hindi nakapag-aral o hindi nakatungtong ng college, mas kukonti no yung nakipag-engage sa casual sex dun sa mga college compared dun sa mga hindi nakapag-college or yung wala man lang high school diploma. Yan. And when emerging adults drink alcohol, they are more likely to have casual sex and less likely to discuss possible risk. Yan. Kasi nga, when you are in the influence of alcohol, your cognitive processes are also affected. Diba? Hindi ka, apektado yung pagde-decide, no? Yung reasoning, yung consciousness, diba? Altered siya. So, possible na um, hindi ka kasi nakakapag-isip ng maayos o mabuti, kaya, ayun, nakapag-engage ka sa casual sex. Okay? So, yun yung mga factors, no, sa sexual activity in emerging adulthood. Alright, so what is intelligence in adulthood? So most modern theories of intelligence are multidimensional. For instance, Balthasar's research shows that development in adults varies among individuals and across different categories of abilities. So pag sinabi nating multidimensional, may mga, kumbaga yung intelligence pagdating sa adult stage ay nagbabago no? Depende sa kanyang abilidad, okay? And depende rin sa bawat individual. So, kaya sinabing multi-dimensional. Pwedeng per abilities, pwede rin namang per person. Okay, so that is the characteristic of theories of intelligence that identify several types of intellectual abilities. So we have multidirectionality. Ayan, sa multidirectionality, yung tinutukoy dito ay merong mga aspect ng intelligence na nag-improve. Like for example, verbal reasoning nag-improve. Pero meron namang nagde-decline during adulthood like yung tinatawag nating fluid intelligence, no? Yung using the working memory. Yan, remembering. Yan. Yan yung possible na nagde-decline habang tayo ay tumatanda. Pero may mga aspects like halimbawa yung crystallized, no, intelligence, yung verbal vocabulary, ayan, yan ay nag-improve as we age. So multi-directional. And then, meron din tayong tinatawag na inter-individual variability. So, ito na yung changes that vary from one person to another person. So, hindi naman lahat ng tao pagdating sa adult stage ay pare-pareho yung nararanasan nila, no, in terms of changes, no, ng intelligence. Kumbaga, depende rin naman, no, sa individual. Yan. Halimbawa, merong tao na nag-improve yung kanyang vocabulary as she age, no? Pero meron namang tao din na baliktad, mas bumababa yung kanyang vocabulary. So, yun yung tinatawag na inter-individual variability. And then, pag sinabi nating plasticity, ito yung concept that intellectual abilities are not fixed but can be modified under the right conditions at just about any point in adulthood. So, meaning to say, even in old age, one person could still be creative, analytical, or practical, no, in terms of intelligence. Lalo na sa pagdating sa creativity, no, there are people who are elders na dun pa lang nila na-realize na magaling pala sila mag-paint, na marunong pala sila mag-compose ng song, no? So, kaya ganun yung ating development. One of the principles of development is that it is plastic, di ba? Development is plastic or it has a plasticity, no, content because the brain development is also plastic. It also can be modified. Yan, kumbaga nag-a-adjust, nag-a-adapt sa circumstance, sa environment, and also nag-interplay din yung genes or yung genetic material at a certain point in life. Okay, so yan yung intelligence in adulthood. So what are primary and secondary mental abilities and how do they change? More recent cohorts perform better on some skills, such as inductive reasoning, but older cohorts perform better on number skills. So, sinabi natin, no, pag sinabing cohorts, ito yung group of people dun sa a certain age or a certain year that they were born. So, yun yung cohort. For example, ako, ang cohort ko ay yung mga pinanganak din ng 1984. And same with you, pinanganak nung 90s, ang cohort ninyo ay yung mga pinanganak din ng 90s. So, sinasabi dito na yung mga younger cohorts, no? Pag sinabing recent, it refers to the young ones, okay? So, they are performing better, no? Dun sa mga skills like inductive reasoning, yan, sa pag-logic, sa pangangatwiran, sa paggamit ng analytical intelligence. And then, the older cohorts naman, they are more better on number skills. Okay? So we have two kinds of abilities, the primary and the secondary. So when we say primary, these are group of related intellectual skills such as memory and spatial. Yeah, related yon kasi kailangan mong matandaan, no, yung mga geometrical or distance, yung mga measurement, di ba, para makapaggawa ka ng spatial relations, di ba? Halimbawa, sa pag-design ng mga bahay, sa mga paglo-locate ng mga uh, uh, places, di ba? You need to have a strong memory skills, di ba? Or ability. Yan. And then, for the secondary mental abilities, there are the broader intellectual skills that subsume and organize the primary abilities. So, para siyang um, yung narrow, no? Siya yung narrow concepts ng primary. So, for example, yung memory can be a secondary and the spatial can be a secondary. And then, it can be grouped to one to a certain primary mental abilities. So, on the next slide, makita natin kung ano yung mga primary mental abilities. Alright, so ito yung mga primary mental abilities. So we have number, o di ba? Siya yung parang umbrella, di ba? Maraming pwedeng mag-under or secondary mental abilities that is related to number. Yan. So number is the basic skills underlying our mathematical reasoning. Word fluency. This is how easily we produce verbal description of things. Verbal meaning. This is our vocabulary ability. Inductive reasoning, our ability to extrapolate from particular facts to general concepts. And spatial orientation, our ability to reason in the three-dimensional world. So these are, or these five are the primary mental abilities. And most of the, what do you call this, yung mga intelligence tests, no? Yung mga and also the aptitude test, they cover most of these primary mental abilities. So, yun lang naman yung tinitest natin kung, para ma-assess, di ba, kung ano yung ating mga kakayahan. Yan, in terms of number, kung tayo ba fluent sa words, marunong tayo magbasa, mag-comprehend, malawak ba yung ating vocabulary, ayan. And then yung reasoning, di ba, yung logic, kung parang, alam mo, may question na if ganito yung nangyari, then what will happen? Mga ganun. Magaling tayong mag-hypothesize. Yan, mag-isip ng mga possibilities. No, yan yung inductive reasoning. That's why sa curriculum, 'di ba, mayroon tayong thesis, research, no? Dahil dun matitest yung inductive reasoning. And then, sa spatial orientation din, ito, ginagamit natin sa pang-araw-araw. Di ba? Yung ability to perceive objects, no? Kasi kung hindi ka marunong, kung hindi mo na-perceive yung mga three-dimensional objects, edi sa simpleng ano madadapa ka niyan, di ba? Kasi hindi mo nakikita yung mga kung gaano ba kalayo, gaano kalapit yung isang bagay, gaano to kalaki, kaya mo ba to abutin, di ba? Yung mga ganun. So that is spatial orientation. And of course, yung mga trabaho na nangangailangan ng galing, no, sa pag perceive ng mga location, di ba, kung saan mo ilalagay, gaano kahaba, gaano kalaki, mga ganun. So these are primary mental abilities that are also at the peak, no, sa young adulthood. And as we age, some of them, sabi nga natin, are multidirectional, some of them decline, and some of them improve, no? So let's see kung ano pa mga concepts ahead. Okay, so ano naman yung tinatawag nating fluid and crystallized intelligence and how do they change? So, pag sinabi nating fluid, ito yung gumagalaw, di ba? Yung mga intelligence na at present ay kinakailangan mo siyang gamitin. So, it consists of abilities that make people flexible and adaptive thinkers. Fluid abilities generally decline during adulthood. So, habang mas bata pa, mas okay ang kanyang fluid intelligence. Tulad halimbawa ng sabihin natin yung sa numerical, no, yung numbers na primary abilities. That is fluid. Okay, yung pagsosolve ng problems, yung pagsosolve ng mga puzzles, yung pag-navigate or paggamit ng technology is also fluid intelligence. Kumbaga, at present, no, at the moment, ginagamit mo siya, ginagawa mo siya, sinosolve mo siya. Yan, kaya fluid, no, gumagalaw, no, it can change. So yan ay mas okay, mas high, no, sa mga bata-bata pa, no, mga young adults, siguro hanggang middle adults, pwede rin. Pero habang tumatanda, pagdating sa late adult, medyo nababawasan yung fluid intelligence. So ano yung mas mataas ang level sa panahon na yun? Yun ay ang crystallized intelligence. So ito naman yung knowledge that people acquire through life experience and education in a particular culture. Crystallized abilities improve until late life. So, ito yung mga parang na-gather natin o mga na-build, no? Yung mga acquired knowledge simula pa nung tayo ay mag-umpisang mag-aral hanggang ngayon. So, example ng mga crystallized intelligence ay yung ating vocabulary. 'Di ba? Hindi naman yung basta-basta makakalimutan eh. Hindi naman yung basta-basta mawawala, no? Kasi the more na ginagamit mo siya, the more na lalo siya nag-improve at dumadami o lumalawak. Yan. So, isa yan sa mga crystallized. What else? Yung memory, yung history. Yan. Kaya, nananatili siyang part ng ating knowledge, no? Kapag tinanong ka kung sinong pumatay kay Lapu-Lapu, di ba? Yung mga ganun. Kumbaga mga historical events sa buhay. Yan. So, yan ay part ng crystallized. O yung mga skilled, no? Mga skills natin na pinag-aralan natin na matagal na panahon, 4 years in college, 2 years in masters, and then we undergo trainings and seminars. For example, yung pagiging psychologist, halimbawa, so, habang tumatagal, yun ay nagiging crystallized yung mga natutunan mong skills sa pagka-counseling, sa pag-therapy, halimbawa. And then, it makes you an expert, no, in that field. Yan. Kaya merong tinatawag na expertise. So, kapag ikaw ay medyo matagal na doon sa larangan na yun, and then also your age is also uh, tumatanda din, di ba? As you age, nag-acquire ka ng more knowledge and skills, and then masasabi natin yun ay part pa rin ng crystallized intelligence. Okay, so how has neuroscience research furthered our understanding of intelligence in adulthood? So neuroscience research has begun mapping specific areas in the brain that relate to intelligence. One prominent theory based in the work is the parieto-frontal integration theory or PFIT. Yan. So, neuroscience research may provide insight into controversies surrounding when cognitive abilities begin to show decline, which some researchers claim begins in the 20s. Kasi may mga studies, no, or research na nagsasabi na nagsishrink daw yung ating brain. And if you correlate or relate the intelligence to the brain structure, if ibig sabihin, probably there is a chance also that intelligence is affected, no? Kapag sinabi natin nagsishrink nga yung brain. But of course, that is still um, research, no? Study siya, pwede pa siyang aralin pa rin, no? Hindi naman siya totally fact na can be considered, no? Kaya puro tayo theory. So that's why itong sinasabi dito na theory na parieto-frontal integration theory na sinasabi dyan na yun daw parts doon sa ating parietal, no, dito sa may bumbunan, papunta doon sa frontal o dito sa may noo, yan, sa parting noo, yan. Diyan daw, ah, diyan daw naroon yung ating function of intelligence, no, naandyan yung mga network of neurons, no, na may kinalaman sa ating intelligence. At kung kiniklaim nga na totoo nga yung pag-shrink ng ating brain, masasabi natin na kasi yun yung part na nag-shrink actually, no? Yung dito sa may unahan, sa may parietal and frontal. Yan. So, yun. Isa lang ito sa mga tinitingnan nila na possible na kaya nagde-decline as we age, no, ang intelligence because of the neuroscience or the brain functioning, no? Yan. Okay. Okay, so if you could remember from the theory of Jean Piaget regarding the cognitive development, the last I think the last stage would be the formal operational thoughts. Yeah, from sensory motor, pre-operational, and then we have concrete, and then we have formal. Now, in this, the formal is starts with adolescence period, right? While the post-formal thought, which is hindi na siya sakop ni Jean Piaget, no? Remember that this concept is not anymore connected with Jean Piaget. Kumbaga ni-relate ko lang siya kasi parang ito yung kadugtong, no? If we would continue the theory of Jean Piaget, so this would be applicable. So parang ganun lang naman. Okay, so ito yung tinatawag nating post-formal thought. Okay, that is characterized by a recognition that truth may vary from one situation to another, that solutions must be realistic, that ambiguity and contradiction are the rule, and that emotion and subjectivity play a role in thinking. So, para siyang pinagsamang logic and emotions. Okay, so emotions and logic in one hand. Alright, so when we are in adolescence period, we are governed or our actions are governed with emotions. No, that's why we are impulsive, we are risky, no? We engage in risky behaviors, we do not think, no? Kaya ganun. And then now that we are already in the young adult, we combine emotions with logic. That's why it's called post-formal thought. All right. So one example of post-formal thought is reflective judgment. Yan. So here, we are able to judge, to validate, what is true, what is real, what is not, and be able to reflect on ourselves, no? Kumbaga parang we can now see other people perspective. At the same time, we relate that perspective to our own perspective. Kaya reflection, di ba? Kaya reflective, di ba? It's more on your personal experience. It's more on your subjective uh, perception, no? Kung ano ba sa tingin mo? Yan, based on my experience, ito ang tingin ko dyan. Di ba? Parang ganun. So, that is post-formal thought. Okay, so let's see, no, kung ano ba yung mga stages ng reflective judgment na galing dun sa post-formal thought. Okay, so here are the description of the stages of reflective judgment in young adulthood. Okay, so stage 1 to 3, uh, it is called pre-reflective reasoning. So this is the belief that knowledge is gained through the word of an authority figure or through first-hand observation rather than, for example, through the evaluation of evidence. Alright, so people who hold these assumptions believe that what they know is absolutely correct and that they know with complete certainty. People who hold these assumptions treat all problems as though they were well structured. Okay, so example niyan is, I know it because I see it. Yan. If it's on Fox News, it must be true. Okay, so sabi dito sa pre-reflective reasoning, ang knowledge daw o ang kaalaman, ang impormasyon ay galing sa salita ng isang authority figure. Ibig sabihin, pwedeng balita ito, pwedeng someone who is expert, pwedeng sa libro galing, pwedeng sa teacher, pwedeng announcement, advisory, or whatever na may pinanggalingan na authority. Di ba? Yan. Pwede rin namang nakita mo, first hand, observation, di ba? Na-observe mo, no? Witness mo talaga, nakita mo talaga. Parang what you see is what you get. Parang to see is to believe. Yan. Okay? So, yan yung pre-reflective reasoning. Kung ano yung nakikita, ano yung may pinanggalingan, kumbaga may source na pinanggalingan yung knowledge or information. Okay? So, yan yung pre-reflective. Stages 4 and 5, the quasi-reflective reasoning. Recognition that knowledge, or more accurately, knowledge claims, contain elements of uncertainty, which people who hold these assumptions attribute to missing information or to methods of obtaining the evidence. Although they use evidence, they do not understand how evidence entails a conclusion, especially in light of the acknowledged uncertainty. Yung kanina kasi certain, di ba? Complete certainty, sigurado. Ngayon ito, ina-acknowledge mo na pwedeng hindi posible or pwedeng hindi totoo, hindi ka sigurado, di ba? Uncertainty, ina-acknowledge mo siya. And thus, tend to view judgment as highly idiosyncratic. Okay? Ibig sabihin ng idiosyncratic, parang it can be individualized. No? Depende. Parang person, parang individual differences, parang ganon. Case-to-case basis, ganyan. So, example statements would be like this. I would believe in climate change if I could see the proof. How can you be sure the scientists aren't just making up the data? Okay? So parang nandun, di ba, ina-acknowledge natin yung uncertainty na, sige, maniniwala ako, pero kung makikita ko yung pruweba o evidence, no? Ayan. Kasi parang nagdududa ka, o may evidence, pwedeng may proof nga, pero pwede kang magduda dun sa paraan kung paano kinuha yung data, kung papaano, ano yung mga missing information, no? Parang may kulang. Ayan. So, yun yung tinitingnan mo naman sa quasi-reflective. Okay? So, yun. So, yan yung dalawa. So, let's move on to another. Okay. So, ito yung pangatlo or yung stages 6 and 7. Reflective reasoning. Ayan. So, ito na, reflective na. Yung kanina, pre-reflective, to cease to believe, di ba? Parang ganon. You are very sure, certain, as long as may evidence. And then sa quasi, pwedeng walang evidence, no? Kahit may evidence, parang nagdududa ka pa rin, may doubt, may uncertainty, ganyan. So, let's see, ano naman ang reflective? People who hold these assumptions accept that knowledge claims cannot be made with certainty, but they are not immobilized by it. Rather, they make judgments that are most reasonable and about which they are relatively certain based on their evaluation of available data. Okay? So, ina-acknowledge natin na pwedeng totoo, pwede ring hindi, no? Pero hindi tayo titigil, okay? Hindi siya mai-immobilize, di ba? Parang gano'n. Tuloy lang, okay? So they believe they must actively construct their decisions and that knowledge claims must be evaluated in relationship to the context in which they were generated to determine their validity. They also readily admit their willingness to reevaluate the adequacy of their judgments as new data or new methodologies become available. Kumbaga, hindi sila masyadong nagko-conclude agad. Diba? Kumbaga, meron silang willingness pa rin para i-re-evaluate, diba? Halimbawa, sa panahon ngayon, mahirap maging sigurado eh. Mahirap mong sabihin na talaga ba? Ninakaw ba talaga? Halimbawa, yung trending ngayon. No? Talaga ba na walang pondo, walang fund? Okay? So, nakikita natin yung mga evidence, maraming tao na nahihirapan, maraming tao na hindi nakakuha. Halimbawa, sabihin natin gano'n, ng tulong, no? Pinansyal, emosyonal, physical, no? Pero, syempre, kumbaga kung reflective reasoning ang ating gagamitin, ay di po pwede naman tayong mag-re-evaluate. Tingnan natin lahat ng posibleng, ah, kumbaga para posibleng rason. Okay? kung bakit ganoon, di ba? Yan. So, sabi dito, ito yung example statements, no? It is difficult to be certain about things in life, but you can draw your own conclusions about them based on how well an argument is put together based on the data used to support it. Ayan. Kumbaga, hindi ka sigurado. No, huwag mo sasabihin na talaga ikaw na ang tama at wala kang mali. You're absolutely right. Kundi, sa reflective, open ka pa rin for possible re-evaluation, no, possible ano to, parang possible na judgment, 'di ba? Kumbaga hindi mo talaga siya parang iko-conclude agad. Pero pwede ka mag-conclude based lang dun sa kung ano yung meron ka. But you cannot conclude in general. Okay? Hindi po pwede yun. Kasi totoo lang siya ngayon, pero pwede hindi siya totoo bukas, pwedeng hindi siya totoo sa lahat ng tao, pwedeng sa ilan lamang, di ba? So, yan yung pagpapakita ng reflective reasoning. Okay? So, parang binabalansin mo yung isa, yung pre-reflective. Yan. So, puro ito evidence lang talaga, di ba? By the book. Yan. O ano yung nasusulat sa batas, doon tayo. Yan. Kasi ito yun eh, nakasulat dito. Policy is policy. Standard is standard. Parang ganun, di ba? Sa pre-reflective. Yan. Eh, doon naman sa isa, masyado na mga ano. Oo, masyado na mga, kumbaga, nagda-doubt, no? Kumbaga, parang, oo nga, eh, hindi naman tayo sigurado kung ano ba ng, di ba, sa plagiarism, nasa handbook na bawal mag-plagiarize. Pero, tingnan mo din yung context, di ba, kung nasan siya, ano ba yung, kumbaga, patunayan, di ba, kung paano nangyari yung plagiarism, ganyan. Dahil sa reflective, edi, mag-decision lang tayo based dun sa kung ano yung available na data. Yan, bago tayo mag-decide, di ba? So, yan yung post-formal thoughts or post-formal thought. Yan. Sa young adulthood. Of course, this is one of the things no that makes us adult. 'Di ba? Yung quality kung paano tayo mag-isip, 'di ba? Hindi na tayo governed ng emosyon, ng damdamin. Kung kumbaga, kasama na diyan yung logic, 'di ba? Yung pagre-reflect sa sarili, tama ba na sabihin ko ito? Ako'y adult na, tama ba na ilaban ko yung sa tingin ko ay tama, 'di ba? Kumbaga titingnan mo na yung mga circumstances, yung context, 'di ba? Bago ka magbitaw ng desisyon, bago ka magbitaw ng salita sa iyong kapwa. Kasi yun ay pagpapakita na ikaw ay isang responsible adult. Okay, so ito yung isang example of a case. Okay, so tinatawag natin siyang dilemma kasi parang we cannot conclude no kung ano ba yung tama o mali. Yan, parang either way, pwedeng tama, di ba? Pwedeng mali. Yan, kaya dilemma. So you are a member of your colleges or university's student judicial board and are currently hearing a case involving plagiarism. The student handbook states that plagiarism is a serious offense that results in expulsion. The student accused of plagiarizing a paper admits copying from Wikipedia but says that she has never been told that she needed to use a formal citation and quotation marks. Do you vote to expel the student? Yan. So, ito yung parang example ko kanina, di ba? Tungkol sa plagiarism. So, dito, I want to discuss this with you during our coffee hour. Okay? So, babalikan natin itong dilemma na to sa ating coffee hour, ha? We will try to get each and every one opinion regarding this case or this dilemma so that I could also assess or evaluate kung ano ba yung pattern of thinking ninyo, kung kayo ba ay nasa pre-reflective, quasi-reflective, o nasa reflective na. Yan. So, tingnan natin. Wala naman siyang tamang sagot, kaya nga dilemma, okay? So, walang right answer. We just wanted to know your opinion about this case. Okay, so balikan natin to ha sa coffee hour. Yan. So, how do emotion and logic become integrated in adulthood. So, ito yung sinasabi ko kanina, no? Yung pinagsama na yung emotion and logic. Cognition or logic and emotion become integrated during young adulthood and middle age. This means that the way people approach and solve practical problems in life differs from adolescence through middle age. So sinasabi natin na syempre iba na tayo mag-isip no bilang matatanda. Sabi nga no ay iba yung pagsosolve ng mga problema, nagiging mas practical pagdating sa pag-analyze ng mga problems, stresses, no? That differs from adolescence. Kasi nga, yung adolescent ay more on, ang ginagamit na kasi sa pag-iisip ay yung kanyang emosyon. No? Padalos-dalos, gawa ng kanyang nararamdaman, no? Nagagalit, nalulungkot ng sobra, hindi niya pa nare-regulate at hindi pa gaanong gumagana yung reasoning no? Sa kanya. Kaya kapag matanda na, aside from aside from the brain that is developing, there is experience no na pwedeng panghawakan, panggalingan kung bakit tayo bilang matatanda ay iba rin mag-isip dahil sa kadahilan ng marami na tayong karanasan sa buhay, marami tayong na-experience na mga problema na ay napagdaanan namin yan, ganito yung ginawa ko, so why not ganito rin yung gawin mo. So may mga ganon, may mga ganong dahilan or mga analysis, no? So, yan yung, ito yung definition lang naman ng terms, no, na kanina ay na-define na natin dun sa kabilang slide. So, yun. Kaya integrated na siya pagdating sa adulthood. Alright? So, kaya minsan mas delikado talaga, no, ang isang teenager or adolescent pag hinayaan mo silang magdesisyon. Yan, sa ganoong edad. Kasi nga, probably, most likely na ang ginagamit pa nila or they are governed by emotions rather than cognitions or logic. Okay? So now we go to the personality in young adulthood. So here we are in the young adulthood stage or period, no, wherein personality is more obvious, more stable, consistent, di ba? uh, rather than during the childhood or adolescence period, no? So, ito na yung time na kung saan masasabi natin na, yan, ganyan siya. Yan ang ugali niya, yan ang kanyang pagkatao, yan ang kanyang personalidad. So, who do you want to be? So, ito na yon sa young adulthood. Okay, so kung babalikan natin yung mga lessons, no, dun sa tawag dito, yung early childhood, no? In terms of temperament, di ba sinasabi natin na ang temperament ay long time, no? Long term na parang flavor of our personality. Kumbaga ito yung parang nagsiset ng kung paano tayo magbe-behave. Yan. And it is stable and consistent. So, kung ano yung temperament mo nung ikaw ay bata, more likely na yun din ang temperament mo hanggang ngayon. So, kung meron mang changes, very minimal or depende kung ano yung mga pwedeng mga pangyayari na nagpabago doon sa temperament mo. It must be uh, a big event no that happened in your life na nagpabago ng temperament. Pero still, lalabas at lalabas, no, yung kung ano yung temperament mo before in other situations. Okay? So, researchers have proposed various ways of describing and classifying types and dimensions of personality. Research has linked several of these types and dimensions during childhood with characteristics of adult personality. So, dito sa easy and difficult temperaments, in one longitudinal study, children who had an easy temperament at 3 to 5 years of age were likely to be well adjusted as young adults. Yan. In contrast, many children who had a difficult temperament at 3 to 5 years of age were not well adjusted as young adults. See, so ito ay research no noong 1987 pa, but there are many other research no na that talks about temperament, and you can search it from the net, okay? So, halos pare-pareho naman yung sinasabi nila, mas marami talaga yung nagko-confirm dun sa theory natin na talagang kapag kung ano ang temperament mo nung childhood, most likely na yun din, no, yung iyong temperament or you are well adjusted. Ibig sabihin, kaya mo na kalmahin ang sarili mo sa mga stressful na sitwasyon and you can easily uh, build a relationship to another person. Kaya well adjusted. Yan. Kumbaga magaling ka makisama. Okay? Kapag easy ang temperament. Alright. So when it comes to inhibition naman, individuals who had an inhibited temperament in childhood are less likely than other adults to be assertive or experience social support and more likely to delay entering a stable job track. Okay? So pag sinabing inhibited, ito yung mga temperament na parang pigil, no? Parang siguro mahiyain, okay? Hindi sila masyadong hyper, um, hindi nila in-express yung emotions, no? O kaya naman hindi sila stimulated ng environment, ganyan. So, less likely, di ba? Hindi sila maging assertive or hindi sila okay lang sa kanilang walang social support. Ayan. And then, yun nga, delay the entering in a stable job. Okay? Also, in this study by Lengua and Wax in 2012, this inhibition naman, o yung kabaligtaran ng inhibited in childhood predicted self-efficacy in adulthood. So what do we mean by self-efficacy? Ito yung belief that we can, okay? Yung paniniwala na kaya mong gawin ang isang bagay. Yan, self-efficacy. Yan. So this inhibited siya nung bata siya, ibig sabihin may kabaligtaran ng inhibited, so hindi siya mahiyain, sociable siya, okay? So in a longitudinal study from 8 to 35 year of age, relative to a low stable trajectory of shyness, okay? Relative to a low stable trajectory of shyness, an increasing trajectory of shyness was linked to social anxiety. So habang tumataas ang level ng shyness, lalong nagiging socially anxious. Okay, nagkakaroon ng mood disorder, na de-depress. Yan. And substance use in alcohol, in adulthood, no? Like alcohol, using alcohol or using drugs or using cigarettes. Yan. So, yan yung longitudinal study. Ibig sabihin, from 8 years old hanggang sila ay naging 35 years old, sinundan sila nung nag-aaral ng study na to, and then napag-alaman nga doon sa study na yon na nung bata sila ay shy na sila, and then habang tumataas, no, sabihin trajectory, parang lalong nadadagdagan yung shyness habang sila ay nagkakaedad, at lalo ding tumataas yung kanilang social anxiety, mood disorders, and substance use. Okay, so another research naman doon sa isang klase ng temperament, yung ability to control one's emotion, no, yung effortful control, no, na temperament. So in one longitudinal study, when 3-year-old children showed good control of their emotions and were resilient in the face of stress, they were likely to continue to handle emotions effectively as adults. By contrast, when 3-year-olds had low emotional control and were not very resilient, they were likely to show problems in these areas as young adults. Okay, so self-understandable naman, no? So sinasabi dyan sa research na yan na yung mga 3-year-old na bata na nagpakita ng good control, no? Sabihin, kaya nilang kontrolin ang galit, lungkot, at saya, no? At mga resilient sila, ibig sabihin ng resilient, yung bang they can easily bounce back from a stressful, painful feeling or context, no? They can easily go back to normal after after a stressful event, di ba? Yun yung resilient in the face of stress. So sila daw yung they can also handle emotions effectively nung sila ay adults na. And then, yun namang may mababa na emotional control at hindi resilient, di sila naman yung may kahirapan, no, sa pag-handle ng emotions nila nung sila ay matatanda na. Also, a recent study revealed a high level of emotionality at 6 years of age was associated with depression in emerging adulthood. Okay? Another longitudinal study found that emotion dysregulation in the fifth grade was linked to engaging in violent crime at 22 to 23 years of age. And that was 2017 study by Calvin and Bierman. Diba? So, very recent lang itong mga studies na to. So, sinasabi talaga dito na actually sa personality, yung neuroticism na trait, no, yung being neurotic, is is about emotional stability. Okay, it's about having or handling emotions in a balanced and mature way. No, kumbaga parang yung neuroticism, kapag highly neurotic ka, so ibig sabihin medyo connected din siya sa pagiging anxious, lagi ka nagwo-worry, no? Tapos yung kapag mababa naman ng neuroticism ay hindi rin maganda, 'di ba? Kumbaga hindi ka nagwo-worry ba, hindi ka nagiging emosyon, no? Walang emosyon. So dapat balanse. So sinasabi dito na kapag higher, ayan, so associated talaga siya sa depression. Eh 'di ba ang anxiety naman ay associated din sa depression. So yan. Yan yung mga researches. At marami pa yan. No? You can search on your own to research about personality and temperament in young adulthood. Okay, so following is a description of the widely used measure of adult attachment created by Hazan and Shaver in 1987. So read each paragraph and then place a check mark next to the description that best describes you. Okay, so number one, I find it relatively easy to get close to others, and I am comfortable depending on them and having them depend on me. I don't worry about being abandoned or about someone getting too close to me. Okay, so if you are like that, then put a check. Okay, so reserve your answers later. Number two, I am somewhat uncomfortable being close to others. I find it difficult to trust them completely and to allow myself to depend on them. I get nervous when anyone gets too close to me, and it bothers me when someone tries to be more intimate with me than I feel comfortable with. Okay, so if you are like that, then put a check. Okay, and then number three, I find that others are reluctant to get as close as I would like. I often worry that my partner doesn't really love me or won't want to stay with me. I want to get very close to my partner, and this sometimes scares people away. Ayan. So if you are like that, then check. Okay? So let's proceed for the interpretation on the next slide. Alright, so here are the description or the interpretation of your possible answers. Okay, so for secure attachment style, securely attached adults have positive views of relationship. Okay, so they find it easy to get close to others and are not overly concerned with or stressed out about their romantic relationships. These adults tend to enjoy sexuality in the context of a committed relationship and are less likely than others to have one-night stands. Yan. So if your answer dun sa kanina ay number one, then you have a secure attachment style. And then for the next one, avoidant attachment style, avoidant individuals are hesitant about getting involved in romantic relationships, and once they are in a relationship, tend to distance themselves from their partner. Okay, so if your answer is number two, and then you have avoidant attachment style. And then for the anxious attachment style, these individuals demand closeness, are less trusting, and are more emotional, jealous, and possessive. Ayan. So, if your answer kanina ay number 3, then you have anxious attachment style. Alright. So, let's talk about this more on our coffee hour. Okay, so ano naman ang lifespan construct? Okay, so how do adults create scenarios and life stories? Young adults create a lifespan construct that represents a unified sense of the past, present, and future. This is manifested in two ways. So, yung lifespan construct, ito yung ating nakaraan, kasalukuyan, at kinabukasan o hinaharap, okay, ng ating buhay. At pwede siyang makita sa dalawang paraan. Yun daw yung scenario at yung tinatawag nating life story. Okay, yung scenario, yun yung nagmamap, no, ng future based on a social clock. And yung life story naman, siya yung nagkikreate ng autobiography. Okay, so yung lifespan construct, ito yung unified sense ng ating nakaraan, no? Nung sabihin, yung bata tayo, yung mga life, childhood experiences, and of course, yung today, yung mga nangyayari sa buhay natin today, and of course, yung mga possible na mangyayari sa kinabukasan o sa hinaharap. Alright? Pwedeng personal experience, pwede rin namang galing o kwento ng ating mga relatives and friends. Yan. And then scenario, these are the manifestation of the lifespan construct through expectations about the future. Kumbaga parang um, tinitingnan mo yung lifespan mo, yung lifespan construct mo, kino-construct mo siya by using scenario, no, lalong-lalo na yung may kinalaman sa future events na kung saan ay pwedeng halimbawa, ah, ah, pagdating ng araw ako ay magiging isang businessman, pagdating ng araw ako ay yayaman, o kaya naman ay nakikita ko na ang future ko ay makakapag-asawa ako ng milyonaryo, no? Makakapag-asawa ako ng OPA, no? Yung mga ganyan. So, yan yung mga scenario. Kumbaga, na-visualize mo kung ine-expect, no? Parang ganon, na-visualize na ine-expect mo yung kung ano yung mga possible na scene o eksena na pwede mangyari sa buhay mo. And then, pwede ring i-construct yung future by means of social clocks. No? It is tagging future events with a particular time or age by which they are to be completed. Halimbawa, by age, let's say, 45. Ayan. So, by that time, meron na akong sariling bahay, kotse, asawa, and all. So, parang nilalagyan mo naman ng clock, no? Social clock, age. Pwede naman time. By the year 2045. Ayan. So, that time, siguro, meron akong, let's say, malaking bahay, no, na maraming tauhan, employees, ganyan. So, yun yung mga, kumbaga, pwede mong lagyan ng year, kung kailan ito possible na mangyari, or pwede kang maglagay ng age, kung kailan ito magaganap sa buhay mo. And that is social clock. Okay, so, parang ganun din sa scenario. However, in scenario, wala kang definite na time or age na ilalagay or babanggitin. Okay? Tapos yung life story naman, this is a personal narrative that organizes past events into a coherent sequence. No? Yung parang, siyempre, pag kinuwento mo yung past mo, sunod-sunod siya. Diba? Kumbaga parang, kumbaga sa life story, kapag nagbigay tayo ng life story, di ba, parang maalaala mo kaya, ganyan, from the past, from the remote past to distant past, di ba? Hindi naman pabaligtad or pabalik-balik, di ba? So, that is life story. Na para maging coherent yung sequence. Pwede naman mauna yung recent, yun nga lang, parang sequel, no? Parang prequel sa pelikula, parang ganun. Pero, alam mo pa rin na yun yung nauna, di ba? Or yun yung sumunod. Kumbaga, meron pa rin siyang sequence. May pagkakasunod pa rin. Okay? So, yan yung lifespan construct. Okay? So, ano naman yung sinasabi nating possible selves? Ayan. So, ito yung pinoproject natin sa future and thinking about what they would like to become, what they could become, and what they are afraid of becoming. Kasi nga, possible selves. Okay? So, ito yung mga pwedeng maging ikaw, no? Ano kaya yung, or pwedeng ayaw mo maging ikaw. Yan. Okay, so, tinatawag itong hope for selves at saka feared selves. Yan. So, sa hope for selves, 18 to 24 years old and 40 to 59 years old report family issues as most important, no? Kumbaga parang, ito yung mga hino-hope for mo sa sarili mo. Yan, gusto mo makapagpatayo ng bahay para sa pamilya, di ba? Gusto mo makapag-asawa ng maayos, gusto mo makapagtrabaho, di ba? Kumbaga para sa pamilya, ganyan. Gusto mo magkaroon ng buong pamilya, ganyan. Whereas, yun ang mga 25 to 39 and older adults consider personal issues to be most important, di ba? Kumbaga yung kanilang self-care. Yan, kung yung kanilang health, no? Gusto ko mag-travel around the world bago ko mamatay, mga ganun, no? Hope for selves yan. O kaya naman, gusto ko magkapera, no? Ma-insured para yung mga maiiwan ko, may makukuha sila. And or kaya naman, gusto kong maging, ano to, um, mag-volunteer para I would feel happy for myself, no? Na ako'y nakatulong sa ibang tao. So, ganyan. Yan yung mga personal issues, okay? And then, however, all groups, mapa 18 to 24, 40 to 59, at saka 25 to 39, include physical aspects as part of their most feared selves. Of course, ayaw nating mamatay. Ayaw nating masugatan, masaktan. Kaya yun yung ating mga most feared selves. Yan. So, kahit na anong edad, ang lagi nating feared selves ay naku, ayoko magkasakit. O kaya ayokong makulong. No? Ayoko masugatan, ayoko maaksidente. Yan. Ayoko maputulan ng paa. Di ba? Yan yung mga feared selves natin. Okay? So, how about you? Anong mga hope for selves ninyo at mga feared selves ninyo? So, you can share with me that on our coffee hour.